Hello everyone, good evening. We are on night 24 of the Elul Screen challenge, journeying on our way to Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, reading passages from Avodat Hashem, Inner Work, teachings of Rabbi Yehuda Ashlag. Page 41, let's see. What can we do when we feel bad? The Rebbe, Zatzal, writes that we can overcome with thoughts of emunah. This means thinking about God's desire to give us goodness. Even though we don't feel this way, our effort to think this way develops our desire to feel this. In the end, God will bring us to feel the truth as well. Okay, let's unpack that. What can we do when we feel bad? When we feel bad, that's kind of a pretty wide range. We feel bad about ourselves. When we feel like we're bad. What can we do when we feel bad? I guess when we don't feel good. When we don't feel good about ourselves, or we feel bad about ourselves when we feel bad. The Rebbe writes that we can overcome this with thoughts of emunah, with thoughts of embodied faith. And what does that mean? It means thinking about God's desire to give us goodness, meaning to think of God's desire to give all of creation and all of humanity, every single human being, goodness. And the goodness is the experience of God, the experience of God's unity, the sacredness of all creation and all existence. Even though we don't feel this way in this moment, in the moment we're feeling bad actually, our effort to think this way develops our desire to feel this way. Our effort to think this way, our effort to push through what we're actually experiencing, using first our mind and our thoughts in a intentional way, a directed way, transforms into emunah, into embodied faith, and develops our desire then to feel this, right? Even though we don't feel this way, our effort to think this way develops our desire to then feel this. It transforms how we're feeling in the moment through the embodied faith. In the end, God will bring us to feel the truth as well. Meaning, in the end, the more we are practicing this embodied faith, emunah, the more we actually come to that place through God. What does that mean? God will bring us there. That through opening ourselves to God and God's presence and the divinity within every moment, the sacredness of all things, the unity of all existence, the magic and wonder of every moment, through God, that is God, we will come to feel the truth, this truth as well. So you have to work when you are feeling bad. And obviously, again, this is very situational, and we don't want to broad stroke it. It really depends on what in the moment you're feeling bad about, what is the cause of your feeling bad. So this is really speaking about a particular experience of feeling bad. And I'm sort of surmising that it is when you are just on your own and you're feeling bad about yourself. Anyway, we could have more discussion about that. If you have questions, pop them in. Spiritual understanding is not about external information, but is rather a state of experience. This is transmitted from teacher to student through their spiritual connection. So spiritual understanding is not, again, the Rebbe's been saying this throughout the book. Spiritual understanding is not about external information. It's not about book knowledge. It's not about being super smart and intelligent. Nothing whatsoever to do with that. It has everything to do with a state of experience, or I would say a state of being. It's all about a state of being that is in union with the divine, that is experiencing God in every moment, in everything, in everyone. And this state of being is actually transmitted from teacher to student through their spiritual connection, right? Through the teacher's being, through the teacher's spiritual connection, their own connection to God and to the divinity. Through that being, it is transmitted to the student. This is why people, again, seek out gurus who are awakened, or so-called awakened or enlightened, because they're vibrating at a certain state of being, and that impacts the state of being of those who are around them, if those who are around them are open to it. The Rebbe Zatzal, and Zatzal means Zecher Tzadik Levracha, means remembering the righteous person for a blessing. The Rebbe Zatzal would say that Torah, learned in an untrue way, makes a person feel big and God seem small. Torah learned in an untrue way makes a person feel big and God seem small. Torah learned in a true way, meaning in the way of giving, is the opposite. Torah learned in a true way, in a way that is about uniting with the divine, in a way that is about transforming one's desire to receive for oneself into a desire to give, is the opposite. The person becomes small, humbled, and God becomes big, because we recognize the greatness of God and that we are just infinitesimal extensions of God. Page 42. The divine light is simple, undifferentiated, and unchanging. All the divine names, sphirot, and spiritual worlds delineate what we need to do in order to experience the light. The divine light is simple, undifferentiated, and unchanging. All the divine names, sphirot, and spiritual worlds delineate what we need to do in order to experience the light, right? So the divine light is simple. It's not complicated. It's not complex. It's undifferentiated and it's unchanging. It's always the same. It's eternally shining down in the same way forever. All the divine names in the Kabbalah, all the Sfirot in the Kabbalah, all the spiritual worlds that we talk about in the Kabbalah they're just there to delineate, meaning to guide us, to direct us on what we need to do in order to experience this undifferentiated light of God. The desire to give is called spiritual because it is eternal. Everything is called physical because in the future it will be nullified. Everything else is called physical because in the future it will be nullified. The desire to give is called spiritual because it is eternal. Everything else is called physical because in the future it will be nullified. We find that eating is spiritual when eating in a state of divine service. Torah learning and mitzvot, commandments, are done for selfish benefit. Torah learning and mitzvot that are done for selfish benefit are physical and will become nullified. Okay, this is a bit chunky, complicated of sorts. So let's see. As we've said previously, the desire to give is called spiritual. Because it is eternal. The desire to give is eternal because it is in an equation of form with God, meaning God is all giving. God does not need to receive in any way, shape, or form. And so giving is also considered an extension of God or an expression of God and is considered eternal. Let's see. Giving. We keep talking about giving, so I'm going to talk about a bit more about giving. Giving is complex. When we think about receiving, we're receiving for ourselves, we're receiving pleasure for ourselves in some way. And we're talking about giving. It's not necessarily like giving charity or giving your neighbor something. Giving is comes from a state of fullness when we're in a state of communion and union with the divine and we lack nothing. We're so full through being an actualized being. We're so full through being actualized and realized that we are an extension of the divine, that we are an embodied expression of divine oneness and unity. We are in that state of unity consciousness where all is one on the ground level of being. And thus we lack nothing. We are in a state of fullness. And from that state of fullness, we see and recognize the purpose of creation, which is to be in communion, to realize God's unity. And we long to give that to others. We long to support others in that. And giving is, in this way, seeing them through God's eyes, seeing them also as an extension of the divine, and longing for them to be realized beings as well, for them to come in to their own state of realization and actualization, their own awakening. And that is, if we could say, a desire of God, which we can't because God doesn't desire anything. It's a little funny there, but if we could say that God desires anything, that it's desiring the homecoming of all of creation and all of humanity in particular, to recognizing our true nature. And so that giving is eternal. That giving is eternal as God is eternal. Everything else is called physical because in the future it will be nullified, meaning it won't, it will, I mean, you could think of it in terms of all physical objects are temporary. They're temporary in existence. And so at some point they will be nullified. They will be dissolved back into nothingness. Or that their identity or their sense of thingness will be nullified to the light of God. Everything is shining with the light of God, but have like layers of, you can think of it as, they call it masach, a screen, or you can think of it as layers of sunglasses. And so all these layers and layers and layers of sunglasses block the light from being seen. And what we instead see is the shadow, or we see the physical inanimate object. And so in the future, all things will be seen as light. They will all be seen as divine emanations, as extensions of God. The Rebbe goes on to say, we find that eating is spiritual when eating in a state of divine service. So this is a special teaching, because eating gives one a state of pleasure. It gives one the relief of hunger, but it also, depending on what you're eating, gives a state of pleasure. Taste buds and the like. So eating, even though eating is something that we're receiving, we receive food, receive energy from the food. So eating is a very receiving type of experience. Eating in a state of divine service is considered spiritual. So there's a couple ways that we can see that eating can be in divine service. One, on a basic level, eating keeps the body alive. The body needs sustenance to have energy to serve God and to fulfill God's will, to work and move through the world, to fulfill our purpose in creation. So when we're eating to give our bodies energy to do God's will, that's eating in divine service. Another way that eating is in divine service is particularly on Shabbat, on the Sabbath, when it's a mitzvah, it's a commandment, a connector to get pleasure through eating. That it's actually a commandment to get pleasure through eating. So the Shabbat meals, the meals we have on Shabbat, are in potential acts of divine service. And so there's a way in which we can receive immense amount of spiritual pleasure through eating on Shabbat in particular, because there's a divine commandment to do so. So when we eat on Shabbat with the intention of fulfilling that divine commandment, it is divine service. That too can also extend to all moments of eating. In what way? That actually when we eat, if our intention is to be connecting to the food as an extension of God, like when I eat an apple and I feel the apple as this magical food, this magical fruit that is divine and sacred, that is an expression of divine energy, of God, and I feel that and I see that, and I'm connecting to the divinity and the sacredness within that food, within that fruit, that apple, and I eat that apple in that way, that also is eating as a divine service, because we're revealing God's light in that way within what we might consider a mundane activity of eating, where God's light is not revealed, like we talked about last night, about what is revealed and what is hidden. And so when we eat that apple as eating God, basically, then we are revealing the light, and it is also in divine service. Torah learning and mitzvot that are done for selfish benefit are physical, are considered physical, and will become nullified. Right? So when you learn Torah and do mitzvot, commandments, for selfish benefit, you could even selfish benefit can extend to because we're trying to get reward for the world to come, the afterlife, then those are considered physical, and they will also become nullified, meaning they will the mask, the facade of what they are in this moment will be lifted, and they will be nullified to the light of God, to the truth of what they actually are. Okay, a little bit esoteric tonight. Hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, let me know, and we'll see you tomorrow night.